We welcome your faces and names to the first Wednesday poetry reading of the so-called new year. This reading is curated by Daniel Bouchard, who has given it the title, I Wish I Had an Atmospheric River, Songs of Joy and Peace. And Dan will be joined by Kate Colby and Rachel Blau DuPlessis. And I'll introduce Kate. I'll read first in just a second. This is our 117th of these weekly readings. And this is also the 722nd episode of the Neo-Sociality Environs. And there'll be information coming up here and there on the chat as each reader comes on, giving you background information or bio information and word on their various endeavors and publications. So keep an eye on that, and there'll be some info on the Rail. My name is Anselm Berrigan, and I'm the poetry editor for the Rail, and really pleased to be starting the year with these folks. And Kate Colby is going to read first. Kate's the author of 9 books of poetry, including I Mean, which is published by Ugly Duckling Press, and Reverse Engineer, published by Ornithopter Press last year. She's received various awards from the Poetry Society of America, the Rhode Island State Council for the Arts, and Harvard's Woodberry Poetry Room, and recent work appears in Conjunctions, Fence, Lana Turner, LitHub, Oversound, and The Nation. She lives in Providence. Please welcome Kate Colby to the Rail Reading Series.
Thank you, Anselm. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail, for hosting all of us. I'm going to keep it brief because there's every chance I'm going to lose my voice entirely. So I apologize if that happens. I'm going to start by reading a few poems from Reverse Engineer, which just came out in October from Ornithopter. And then I'll read a few new poems. Ars Poetica. Herein, the question of what a poem is more important than what it says. That said, no poem ever fails to extemporize its reason for being what is essentially itself. Trees smear train window, more immediate forehead grease. What I write about the everyday is not my experience of the everyday, a vestigial armrest ashtray. A genome isn't made of letters. This is hard to remember. Narrows, shallows, knee pockets, sockets I can't see the back of. My body is half a map and the rest is history. What I can't know beyond recollection, I put into words to see how it seems. Dupe. 2 precepts of artificial intelligence on television. Never show a computer its code, and the more a robot understands, the less likely it is to know it's not real. I am nothing if not aware the self is made the shape that explains it. The purpose of living is to keep alive. What I should know, I should know. Airlock. Form is what we share the world with, a wave that doesn't take the water with it. Only you contain me like a sieve sorts the sea. We hold our heads in each other's hands, found our air Atlantis, the key to which breaks the lock by breaking in it. Reverse Engineer. The measure of a fence is its definition, of my mind its mark in the mouth, mirroring alluvial fans of my face. What kind of a document is a photo of a map? Whether I've seen a thing whose word I'm unsure of, say a pergola, it's practically certain, but I've never put oblivion in a poem before. All this time I didn't even notice. Took almost forever. pretty much everything. The pickets are listing what I am used to being broken. Codicil. My ghost has grown a lot smaller than my outline, ripped from ragged fabric, holes for eyes, black or see-through, I can't say. In my Vedic utterances of yesterday, I had 2020 speech. I'm left a list of indices rattling around in my half-double helix. I am what's needed of my own erasure. Take all the empty cans of air on top of Everest, a hollow cairn of barrenness, the half moon finished to begin with. All fall the hurricanes break up overhead, flicker on the floor. Far beneath, star-nosed and crepuscular, I root for seeds I need to grow, bend and be also broken.
You're great.
Centaur. 1. Is a wave made more of motion or matter? Is the answer half of each? That seems too exact. One rule of science is it works the same everywhere, except for the words in which it's conceived. In other words, half a glass is complete. 2. A boy pulls legs off a daddy long legs, shuddering black dot, stripped of its name, which won't regenerate. The universe is heavier than what we know is in it. There's no proof of Nietzsche having hugged a horse, for instance. 3. Let's go means either toward or away, or uncontracted, releases, which is just between. Language, some believe, is here to make us think. Silence can't exist without a word for it. I'm going to finish with 4 new poems. The first is called Antediluvian. I might be a slight woman, but rhetorical Methuselah, run on face and pronounced mouth. In the teeth of all data, I am lashed to the mast, awake at the crack of ruin. Light heaves west while I write from the middle. The ocean isn't finished. My head is a pin cushion of holes with pins in it. The fall. The first time someone named a place, it was all over. Tin-snipped sky, grim line of yews, moss-fretted fence threaded with the rest of the resurrected rose. Tomorrow in the city, brittle, blown dry women will blink into lobbies, forever arriving at what they don't need to find the words for. History is how we think happened. Adam and Eve's first infraction was a moment of speech, or just after. Exactly. A center is wherever you need it, as a weed is a plant you didn't put there. Tongue long, chaise long, imagine that. All you thought was real is not, a trompe-l'oreille hitch in the schism. Early springs, expectant trees, shredded bags, haunting branches. Old 7B is now 9C, new way, same place or other way around, wreath of weather-beaten freesia, R.I.P. Maria.
Mm-hmm.
As a wave peels back the skin of the sea, green packed fish and rack, a word is a trap for a cartoon cat, that rolls up its shadow and stalks off with it, only to return, unfurl, and fall into. Lastly, this one's called nuclear. Is one molecule of water wet? An invisible thing may be green. Between, meaning together, not at half their distance, words and me, a wave ceases to be at some length. Water is not wet, only that which touches it. I learned in the lurch of inertia before the train starts moving, most things are illusory, but not everything. It's all here. Took millions of years for man to arrive at this poem about what's lost forever from my temporary hand. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Kate. And your voice held up completely.
So
Next, we're going to have Rachel Blau DuPlessis read. Rachel's a poet, critic, and collagist. Just published in 2022, was selected poems 1980 to 2020 from CHAX Press. And she's got 3 books forthcoming, it looks like, in this coming year. One is called A Long Essay on the Long Poem from University of Alabama Press. The collage poem, Life in Handkerchiefs from Materialist Press, and Daykeeping 2020 from Selva Oscura. Her work in poetry includes the multi-volume long poem Drafts, which she worked on from 1986 to 2012. Please welcome Rachel to the Rail reading.
thanks very much. It seems to be true, but you never know what's going to be published, actually. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here. And it's nice to be in these little Zoom boxes. I would like to begin with a poem to honor Naomi Raplansky, who had a nice long life, but we miss her already. This poem from her collected was written in the 1970s, and it's called A Literary Note. Once upon a time, in a country without a written language, a woman sang a song to her child. In its grandeur and melancholy and simplicity, it surpassed all poems ever in books, even in the 9 lost books of Sappho. Though this cannot be proven, I swear it happened. Sometimes you need an alphabet again. I often do. And often towards the beginning of the year. So this is an alphabet as letters to me and to you if you also want to get some letters. They're very self-different ones with their own personalities in a structure both closed and not closed. Alphabet as letters. A. Remember to look around. Remember where and how you are. Observe bodies of metamorphosis and loss. It's the alphabet again, a magic on the edge. And anything makes almost anything once combination is freed up. Even polyphony does not begin to cover it. B, between. It's always the between space of curious relations, and eros open and pulsing, magnetizing, bonding, horizons, root systems, electricities. C, no bonbons, no amuse-bouche, little charm. So now You've made this very work so thoroughly uncharming that very few will care. And since you're not creating goodies, you'll not be getting any goodies. So there. D. Some days in the year are called the days of awe. How dare me dare this year? All days are. E. Chew through enough oaten flutes, and maybe you can write an epic too. F. Certainly your box of failure will be interesting in retrospect, don't you think? G. It's all gloss, i.e. entanglement, commentary, given. I've never met a genre I didn't cotton to, being green that way. H, this is actually a citation, more or less. Yo, it's ancient history what happened with the history. Why should I think of the history? I wasn't here for the history. Philadelphia Inquirer, January 3rd, 2019. I knew this was going to happen. I'd lose it. All the various imperfections, stumbles, mumbles, lurches, and all still beginning, though me long eroded, thus pushing against the turgid weight of something once named, condensing, but not too much, explaining, but not too much, analyzing without sealing over, porous, singing, not too pretty, performing, but not acting out, investigating, but no rigidity, in readiness, but never befogged by theory, often inexplicable. Really? This is I, myself? I don't know. Am I defending the right word? J. What makes you continue investigating these junked possibilities for continuance? Force of habit? Without joy, only jaded insistence, just this. You need to attend to your actual justifications. You are free fall faking in the guise of doing justice. K. I never knew why. Yet still, and still, there is. There it. L. Languages often talk to each other, enchanted and somewhat drunk on mutual affection. People, sometimes not so much. M. This is a manifesto for no one but myself. N. Necessity. I write what I think is necessary to write, said Pierre Boulez. And does this work have necessity? I say, not trying to annihilate anyone else's claims for why do the work. Oh, every one of her sentences is poised like the last sentence of her work, every sentence. Yet nothing ever feels as if it's ending. It was all it, all in it, all of it, deep within and ready without, at once porous and absolute. P. Catalyzed syntax, attentive necessity, embodied thinking, then weaving a twist of extra string wrapped in, and hanging an egg over her head, held by a thin thread, invisible plumb line from the lofty ceiling to vibrate during choral singing. then swoon with the moon in the universe. This is only one picture, perhaps, but encapsulates clarities of praxis. Q, quests. Our epistolary ribbons glisten with tempting momentum, whose alertness to this intricate map of quests threaded through quality betweens suggest us speaking second, further languages simultaneously, a queerish bilinguality for players. R. The past is not that clear. Pressures riven into desire, and there are losses of languages, not enough evidence. Through time, this is so true that it's a wonder we have any residue. There's so much effaced, unheard, unknown. The present is also quickly effaced. But strong within one single probe is revelation, how the memory rhizome threads its multiples through and beyond. Plus, then there's the most intriguing question, how to select it, how to arrange it, how to sequence intricacies of the suddenly sayable. S. Just entered. Shoes of the disappeared. That's the memorial. Is the realness of other people one of the harder concepts to reckon with? Their former realness and the events undertaken to nullify their realness, unpardonable and often commonplace. To struggle with this fact, to mourn it, show their shoes lined up, edge of the canal, in front of the school, on the field, in bunker-like storage units. This, repeated in several countries, given various histories, in that one medium, shoes, an array set out to commemorate variable but similar events. T. I did not want to come to terms, but I'm also getting impatient with my terminability. This is no triumph. You. What do I need? Sweet bread baking in the daytime, honey cooling in the yeasty air holes of my life, nasturtiums I can pinch right off the plant and eat. You need to download this upgrade. Volvel is very foxy, peripherally, centrifugally, and radially, precisely like the wicked wheels of time. I should say that was V. And this one is W. Writing did not correspond to the experience of being here. It is another kind of wave, pulsing in time differently. Was I forcing it too much? Or did this activity, simply called work, paradoxically release the wave into the real? X is here. Where things cross, where they come loose, where they become mysterious, and hope they might begin to make design. Why? Workplace storage unit, new material, old material still usable, junk. It could actually be anything that confronts you. A comma, a dot, a yod, one smallest letter. It could be a pile of dirty yellow rag. Coda, Z, zombie. You say you want to finish undone work from many years ago. You cannot. The poems might be undead, but they are zombie work. Put it to rest, elegies of strange bits and of unwritten poems, all must remain unwritten. Once there was a stake, but now it's in their hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. That was fabulous. And now we're going to hear from Daniel Bouchard, who is the this week's curator. Daniel's most recent books are Spider Drop from Sub Press and Art and Nature from Ugly Duckling Press. Peter Gizzi has said of his work, there's a love of diction, of words and their histories, of things and things as words, a highly crafted and hammered work artfully deployed. His poems in progress examine received history and scrutinize it as manifested in painting, poetry, film, music, and monuments. He's a long-distance walker and an amateur book restorer. Please welcome Daniel Bouchard to the Rail series.
Thank you, Anselm. And thank you, Kate and Rachel, for participating, for being part of this reading. This is called Poem of Spiral Lines. The gallery walls turned Dutch seascape. We were talking of John Wieners and the late Charlie Shively. There is a desire to bypass these spaces of representative sea, American slices or Dutch, and see the bleached out, unframed beach with a painter's eyes. We were talking of Blake and the many-headed hydra, and saw water again as a prop for rescue, where kids might grab hold of bodyboards, bright graphics of dolphin and unicorn glistening, and plead, let's go deeper because they can go deeper. But when that far offshore, the waves are sure to be missed. The reader who carries a battered vasculum knows anthologies are only pressed leaves and cluttered herbarium, while uncut weeds flourish and flower on the margins. No prizes for them, but a profuse record of pollination and a veering from the soporific. Well, isn't that terrific? The conquest of bread. Food is good but expensive, and the food isn't great either, and it shouldn't cost half your pay. I only want sustenance to thrive and for life and things to taste good. A sweet-covered beefsteak and candy concoctions to drink. I told the chickens in the yard they must be joking, strutting amid the debris, a divine comedy. Who invented cream cheese is the new cock-a-doodle-doo. Need, rise, and baking at home is for the folksy well-off, but for most hourly wages, it's sliced bread. I mean, a century or so ago, who even had an oven? I never learned much. I could not tell basic commodities from run-of-the-mill fetishism. When did refrigerated cars become common, sending beef teriyaki sticks 1,000 miles? Eat meat cheap, the red pole sang, and the ghostly milk trains roll by. My granite pan, my frying pan, my colander and funnel, my chipped saucer, my bread box, my venerable coffee pot. Want lines of the market reflect a human condition, the farmer's market and kettle corn and fresh fish. This old boiling pot, this great cauldron relentlessly demands sacrifice of fuel, requires time, requires flame, patience, and recipe of attention. You can get your picture on the wall of the underpass for consuming quantities of pancakes or steak. Are you some kind of leader? The community oven was born and privately owned. How to produce daily bread and move it about both city and country is the study of sedate civility and also fiery upheaval, each a pathway back to economics and revolution. Moral reformers now are mostly psych workers and don't worry where the food comes from as long as we dine together. Nothing ode, ODE, to a public park. Are the kids steaming butternut squash out in the woods again? This mound is too perfectly shaped to be a glacial drumlin, and it's certainly not a burial mound from 1,000 years ago. It's only a capped landfill centered on a former celery farm, and makes a decent sledding hill in the days following snowfall. Covered in weeds now, perennial, thick, stalky growth, too steep for public works to buzz it down with a mower. An enormous pollinator garden rises like a giant's bouquet, and the gaps at intervals along the playing fields are made by coyotes or something just as short and heavy. I don't know why the air smells like a root vegetable. Maybe it's October decay, dead flowers, made known by fading colors as remarkable on the dying side of the spectrum. Canada geese fly low overhead. I have nothing, and I have nothing. The icy lines jets leave behind are illuminated by the setting sun. I got nothing about the curiousness of seasons and the life cycle of bees still at work in the chilly air. Nothing for the ducks getting by in the super gross dead water down the hill, or the toddlers in the playground, the kids in the skate park, or the dinner I head home to, or the books I'll pick up later. I've got nothing. Offline. I write this notebook on the verge of sleep, whittling kazoos to fill a page, and canoes to make a book. The voice hollowed through car radio. I can't turn you loose. There is no way to drop a book gracefully. The sound made when a book hits the floor is called shame. Hard to catch. Try to catch, but only swat it further away. Loose paper slips between floorboards. I wrote floorboards. The paper slides into permanent file, drawer of a subfloor. A notebook that once lay around, now lost. The haloed sound of a car radio falls away. Accidental repository, sound scraps for future, dropped among dried macaroni and hard rice, collecting more dust than notes. Not just sleep then, but a just slumber. Before the liminal dream state fell away, from a hillside patch of blue, flowers breaking through the damp strata of last year's leaves. Blue flowers, not tough, but brilliant. Home faux empyrean. I have no vested interest in falling leaves. I like bright afternoons, a perennial event. I even drag a rake like a festival participant. Maybe the robins know if this angers the trees. Maybe the quaking rage of trees can cause sap to bubble and rise and burst next spring in a profusion of pink buds. How calm trees seem when sky is orange, when flames lick the forest over the hills, when smoke courses and streams like incinerating angels descending. I have no vestigial interest in fading lines, now falling after just a few lines. Leaves from the red maple remain too green, like a recipe that didn't come off. Maybe overcooked by summer heat. Maybe the accustomed red is a mere misfire. Now a blue jay commandeers the tree, barking about a robin's nest. Not nice, not neighborly, no blue eggs in the nest anyway. I throw my hands up for the birds, prolific and violent. Now 2 blue jays bark at each other because traffic below the tree stopped 2 years ago or has barely returned. They bark, pandemic, pandemic, ha ha ha. Horizontal writing. The right word is a mote floating in the sunbeam by the rain-streaked window. Is just the right word attainable while hanging around in here? Is dust like an asteroid field for small insects? To sit still of an afternoon, thinking of sleep, and the dream of reverberating lines, notes lower than conversation, still wanting to make the mindful effort that fingers cast like spells upon the screen. The magic of images land naturally in mind. A phenomenon so real, it seems like magic. Schmidt says Rimbaud's last poem is about soldiers farting. Actually, it's an ode to cheese. I hover in the sunbeam, grabbing at words common as dust. So many poets end as old cheese. Well, this hardly passes for purple verse. Lice-laden, sullen Rimbaud, sulking in the Montmartre Hotel, run by the in-laws of drunken Verlaine. Debussy as a boy came for lessons. We liked the scent of tobacco from old pipes, though we would hardly light one ourselves. Better a trace floral scent in the nose than acrid smoke in the throat. Who said that, Walter Raleigh or Henry Vaughan? The city is a solvent of dissipated minerals. The gardens are held in high esteem. Most of the vegetables are carted in, and the museums, bookstock, monuments, and film, but the poetry and the music drop from air. Book group. A man encouraged his son to enlist, to serve, to see the world, and the son was sent far away and wrote home, "This sucks. I am miserable." The father was aggrieved. This was during the Napoleonic Wars. The father killed himself. Meanwhile, the son got along well and advanced in the military. He became a hero and returned to his village to discover his father, a suicide, lay in an unmarked grave outside the church cemetery. So he provided money to have the corpse reinterred at a neighboring parish with a proper headstone. But some glitches in the course of things screwed up his plan, and the headstone ended up in the woods, broken, the body never moved. Time passed. The son retired to the village. Those with knowledge of his father's grave grew old and died. The son lived alone, very sad, I suppose. Life moves fast in the pages of a book and often seems myopic. One day he too killed himself. The title of this piece is "Everybody Ought to Read More Thomas Hardy." I don't need the calories of reading, but I do crave the fat. Sometimes poetry is like cod liver oil. Sometimes poetry is like Fruit Loops. Balance or three square was never a goal. There is no being sensible about it while still acquiring piles of books that insulate rooms of the house. Poems never appeared on trees, but rose out of the ground, supple and resilient in earthy discourse, yet not at all like living fiber. That's why literature feels like a personal garden or the floor of a secret dungeon, if not a kitchen, where tools lay disorganized among knickknacks and spice, a handful of objectives and innumerable distractions. Pastorals appear today with trace amounts of polychlorinated biphenyls, durable and resistant to degradation, but turning up in the fat of literary prizes and the soft tissues of institutions as seen in their funding. The farm-dotted hills were not so good for Ethan Frome, there being no Packies then. But Bernadette sure put the beers away in those early books. A Packy and a pickup may have softened Ethan's woe, but made everyone around him miserable. How his creator self-medicated is hard to say. She went to France and never lived here again. I appreciate the idea of poets as machinists, but poems as machines? No thanks. What with the oil required, the documentation for manuals, the marketing, plus the planned obsolescence to make way for the new and shiny. Do you remember the tree in a kid's book that gave all to a little boy? Gave fruit, gave limbs, gave life, unless life be a stump for old men to sit and termites to chomp from the tips of its deep roots. The tree loved children, but not termites. And the boy, who hated trees more than anything, returned once again to kick at the rotting stump, pleased to see it come apart so easily. Now the hawks call the squirrels chicken, and the squirrels call the acorns weed. The acorns are embedded in the ground like mosaic. Goose droppings surround them like grout. A fallen tree reveals human bones and field stones in the uprooted mass, and a speculating crowd fills the green where a cemetery had been. None remember the cemetery. A temporary fence was placed on the perimeter, and professionals stepped in to attempt a census of the returned residents. I guess they don't make found art like they used to. I am ready again to realign lines like tires and kick them. First, the software reminds me how little I do, and that my last edit was 6 days ago. When you read these poems, your mind won't be still. And if your brother won't read them, then your sister will. And I'll end with a poem called Magnitude. The microplastics in table salt are lighter than lead. The saline solution my eyes sleep in does nothing to counter the dimming. A planet swims in my eye, watery with seasonal dust. One pleasure of night is to stare beyond Earth, a combination of knowledge and imagination, the framework of exploratory poetics. A planet fills my eye, Venus suspended outside the double pane window, involuntary homage of blinking in spring, and the flight passing above, moving blindly between cities. Passengers may look down at the mass of mostly yellow and white lights. Eye knowledge blinks away illusion, absent gaze or penetrating look. Dry your eyes, presbyopic. No amount of strain will make near things appear sharp again, without lenses to magnify that attention. Wipe away mist and dust. Curiosity and poor eyesight make for new discoveries. Align eyes with light, always more light. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Daniel. And thank you, Rachel and Kate. Thanks everybody for being here. I think I'm going to be thinking about that line. What was it? They don't make found art like they used to. I think I'm going to think about that for a while. Should we throw open the mics and let everybody say hello for a second and goodbye as we head off into the ether of the lunch world? I can't believe I just said that. The ether of the lunch world. What's wrong with me?
I guess they don't make ether of the lunch world like they used to.
If Rimbaud had met Chewbacca instead of Verlaine, it would have turned out a lot better for him.